Welcome to the Soapbox Podcast with your host, Winter.
Well, hello everyone. I want to welcome you to the Soapbox Podcast. I am your host, Winter. In this podcast, we are going to be digging a deep dive into the demonic. I mean, from start to finish. We are going to get deep about the demonic. So I hope that you will join me, and I pray that this will be a really good podcast, that you will come away from this with knowledge that you maybe didn't have before about the demonic, how they operate, how to get rid of them, and let's get going on this podcast. So welcome everybody. I'm really glad you're here. Sit back, relax, get yourself a drink. I've got water, and just enjoy listening to this podcast about demons. I first want to go over the definition of demons. Demons are fallen angels who, along with Satan, chose to rebel against God. I'm going to read a verse here in Isaiah chapter 14, starting with verse 12 through 15. How you have fallen from heaven, O bright star, son of the dawn! How you are cut down to the earth, you who made the nations prostrate! You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of meeting in the uttermost parts of the north. I will ascend above the high places of the clouds. I will make myself like Elion, yet you will be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest parts of the pit. The next verse is from Ezekiel, and this is chapter 28, starting at verse 12. Son of man, lift up a lament for the king of Tyre. Say to him, Thus says Adonai Elohim, you were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering, ruby, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald. Your settings and your sockets, a workmanship of gold. In the day you were created, they were prepared. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you on the holy mountain of God. You walked among stones of fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. By the abundance of your trade, they filled you with violence, so you have sinned. So I threw you out as a profane thing from the mountain of God. I made you vanish, guardian cherub, from among the stones of fire. Your heart was exalted because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. I threw you down to the earth. Before kings I set you up as a spectacle. By the multitude of your iniquities, in the injustice of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. So I brought fire out from within you, and it has consumed you. I have turned you to ashes on the earth, in the eyes of all who saw you. All who know you among the people will be appalled at you. You have become a horror and will be nothing forever. That is about the devil. I'm going to go into a different book, and this is the book of Ezekiel. I am in chapter 15 and reading verse 8. My judgment for the giants is that since they are born from flesh, they will be called evil spirits and will remain on the earth. Because they were created from above, from the holy watchers, at death their spirits will come forth from their bodies and dwell on the earth. They will be called evil spirits. The heavenly spirits will dwell in heaven, but the terrestrial spirits who were born on earth will dwell on earth. The evil spirits of the giants will be like clouds. They will afflict, corrupt, tempt, battle, work destruction on earth, and do evil. They will not eat nor drink, but be invisible. They will rise up against the children of men and against the women because they have proceeded from them. So that's another definition of demons and where they come from. Some demons are already locked in darkness, bound with everlasting chains, and that is in Jude chapter 1, starting with verse 6, ending at verse 8. And the angels who did not keep their own position of authority, but deserted their proper place, he has kept in everlasting shackles under glooming darkness until the judgment of the great day. In the same way as these angels, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the cities around them, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after a different sort of flesh, are displayed as an example, suffering the punishment of eternal fire. Yet in the same way, these people also, by their visionary dreaming, defile the flesh, reject the Lord's authority, and defame glorious beings. Other demons are free to roam and are referred to as the powers of the dark world and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So we're going to read Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the worldly forces of this darkness, and against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Demons, as spirit beings, have the ability to take possession of a physical body. Demonic possession occurs when a person's body is completely controlled by a demon. This cannot happen to a child of God, since the Holy Spirit resides in the heart of a believer in Christ. Now, I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. I need to go back here to some different notes. Okay, gateway for demons. Ephesians 4, chapter 27. No, I didn't. Gateway for demons. Ephesians 4, let's start at verse 25. So lay aside lying, and each one of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, nor give the devil a foothold. That's where I should have started reading. Sorry about that. A second way for gateway for a demon is wickedness and evil deeds, and I'm going to refer to James 4:7. Therefore submit to God, but resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Okay, we are in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 31. Do not turn to those who are mediums or to soothsayers. Do not seek them out to be defiled by them. I am Adonai, your God. Deuteronomy chapter 18, starting at verse 10 through verse 12. There must not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or fortune teller, soothsayer, omen reader, or sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or a medium, a spiritualist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to Adonai, and because of these abominations, Adonai your God is driving them out from before you. Remember, these are gateways. This is how the evil one, the demons, have access to you. It's through your actions. Remember that. Okay, we're in Galatians chapter 5, and we're starting at verse 19. Now the deeds of the flesh are clear. Sexual immorality, impurity, indecency, verse 20, idolatry, witchcraft, hostility, strife, jealousy, rage, selfish ambition, dissension, factions, verse 21, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these. I am warning you, just as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit God's kingdom. And on top of that, you are opening doors for Satan to just walk on in. The next one is physical or emotional trauma. I am going to move over to here and talk about demonic legal rights. How do they have the legal right to come and do what they do to us, okay? So, always comes from a free will decision or choice made by the human being. That is very important to grasp onto this. They have a hierarchy and a legalistic rules that they have to follow that God laid down before time ever began in the heavenlies. Okay? Remember that. So, what are the legal rights for them to get access to us as people, as human beings, as flesh and blood? Sins, number one, especially willful sins. When we sin, it gives the demon a legal right to bother us or affect us in one way or another. The deeper the sin, the bigger the door that is opened to the devil. When a person allows, and I underlined allows twice, unholy thoughts to enter their mind, which the enemy plants, by the way, it can open a door to a demon of lust, which can then lead to sexual immorality like adultery. If not stopped by the human rebuking the demonic thoughts, the sin becomes worse until the human is doing despicable things. It's like a snowball effect. You open one door with a thought, and that thought turns into a sentence, and that sentence turns into a paragraph, and that paragraph turns into a lifestyle, and the next thing you know, you are living in a world of hurt, living in this horrible place of sin, and the demon just plays havoc with you. You just let that demon take over and take over your life. This can lead to bondage. You need to confess and repent the sin and rebuke the evil in Jesus' name to be free of the oppression. Unforgiveness, childhood rejection, points of weakness, emotional shock, physical trauma, fearful experiences in childhood leaves us vulnerable for the demon to attach himself to us. Cursed objects, spoken self-curses, making vows to an evil spirit, watching horror movies, listening to songs that are demonic. And if you're listening to any songs on the radio that are not Christian, more than likely you are listening to songs that are filled with demonic messages these days. You have to be very careful about this. That is how they get in. This is how they get their feet in the door. Jesus, during his earthly ministry, encountered many demons. None of them were a match for the power of Christ. I'm just going to give you these verses so you can look them up yourself. Matthew chapter 8, verse 16. Jesus' authority over demons was one of the proofs that he was indeed the Son of God. Luke 11:20. The demons who encountered Jesus knew who he was, and they feared him. Matthew 8:29. The demons know their end will be one of torment. The Satan and his demons now look to destroy the work of God and deceive anyone they can. 1 Peter 5, verse 8, 2 Corinthians 11, verse 13 and 15 through 15. The demons are described as evil spirits, Matthew 10:1, unclean spirits, Mark 1:27, lying spirits, 1 Kings 22:23, angels of the Satan, Revelations 12, verse 9. The Satans and his demons deceive the world, 2 Corinthians 4, verse 4. They propagate false doctrine, 1 Timothy 4, verse 1. They attack Christians, 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7, 1 Peter 5, verse 8, and combat holy angels, Revelations 12, 4 through 9. The demons, fallen angels, are enemies of God, but they are defeated enemies. Christ has disarmed the powers and authorities, and he has made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross, Colossians 2:15. As we submit to God and resist the devil, we have nothing to fear. 1 John 4:4. Okay, so we talked about how demons gain access to a human. More reference verses for you. I've got demons are described in the Bible as disembodied spirits that need to inhabit a body to work evil. Therefore, demons are believed to seek entry into human bodies to exert their influence and cause harm. Matthew chapter 9, verse 32, chapter 12, verse 22, chapter 7, verse 18, Mark chapter 5, 1 through 20, 7, verse 25 through 29, Luke chapter 4, 33 to 36, Luke chapter 22, verse 3, Acts 16, verses 16 through 18, 1 Samuel 16, verses 14 through 15, 1 Samuel chapter 18, 10 through 11, and 1 Samuel chapter 19, 9 through 10. Now, let's talk about mental illness, and I don't need my book for this. I got in and did a lot of research about mental illness and demonic, and it took me a while to find any kind of a study that correlated the two together. And I did finally find one, and it was done in 2019. The mental health people, psychiatrists, psychologists, all of that, they're way behind in their times. They really do not get the fact that this is nothing to do with a brain anomaly for the most part. It has to do with demonic oppression or possession. And yes, I will state that boldly. If you read Jesus' accounts through all four Gospels, you will never see one person having to go to a psychiatrist. Not one. Every single person that Jesus healed, he removed a demon from them. There's nowhere in the Bible that says you need a psychiatrist. You need deliverance, but you do not need a psychiatrist. I'm going to be showing some clips from the O.J. Simpson trial, one clip from the O.J. Simpson trial, and one clip from an interview done with Mark Furman about 3 weeks ago that he did this interview. 4.5 hour long interview, and I watched every minute of it. If you don't know who O.J. Simpson was, because he has now passed away, he was a football player. He won the Heisman Trophy. He was like the best running back ever, apparently. It was back in the 1970s. Well, he met this woman by the name of Nicole Brown when she was 18. He became utterly possessed with her. He divorced his wife, and they got married when she was 18. He abused her throughout the entire marriage, and it resulted in her death, and it was a horrific death. Her neck was slit, almost cut her head off, and a young man that was there with her was also murdered, and it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. During the trial, which I'm going to put the clip up, Denise Brown, who is Nicole's sister, and they looked a lot alike, except Nicole was blonde and Denise was dark-headed. She is on the stand, and she is describing O.J. Simpson during a time that she was at their house, and O.J. became rageful, and he started throwing pictures off the wall. She talks about his facial structure changing completely. That is demonic possession. If you see somebody that's angry and their whole facial structure changes, their eyes change, they are in the demon, and the demon is manifesting. So this demon was manifesting right in front of Denise in that home that day. And they were the defense was trying to knock this testimony out because, what do you mean facial structure and all of that? You're only going to see a little snippet. So I want to show those 2 clips to you now. And then when we come back, we'll talk more about demonic possession in people. I've had personal experience.
Mr. Darden.
Okay. Did you see the defendant's face immediately after you told him that he took your sister for granted?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what, if anything, unusual did you notice about his face at that time?
At that time, he got very upset, and he started screaming.
Now, was his anger manifested in any way other than the fact that he began screaming?
Yeah, his whole facial structure changed. Everything changed about him.
Okay, well, when you say his facial structure changed, what do you mean? Elaborate on that for us, please.
It was a calm, quiet, normal conversation, like we were sitting here right now, and then all of a sudden it turned into the eyes got real angry. It was his whole jaw, everything started, his whole face just changed completely when he got upset. It wasn't as if it was O.J. anymore. He looked like a different person, and that's what Nicole had always said when he gets angry.
Let me stop you there. Had you seen the defendant angry on other occasions?
Not like this.
Okay. Well, this change in his facial structure that you just testified to, is that something that commonly happens when the defendant becomes angry?
I had never seen it like this before. No.
So that was the first time you'd ever seen him get that angry?
Yeah.
Well, then when I watched the Mark Furman testimony, which was the detective who found the bloody glove at Rockingham and was accused of planting said evidence, but he did not. He just did an interview, and he was called out to the Simpson residence back in 1984 or 5. And when he pulled up with his partner, O.J. Simpson and Nicole are outside, and there's a gate that you have to go in to get into Rockingham, into the driveway. He said O.J. was standing there with a bat in his hand.
And we finally figure out where it is, and we get there. I'll never forget, there's a Mercedes parked coming down the driveway, and this would have been the north entrance that they drove up to. We walked up, the gate was open. Simpson was to the left, leaning on another car with a baseball bat in his hand. And he had a look that was like he wasn't really here. Like a set jaw, dead stare. He wasn't really there, like he didn't see what was going on. Nicole was sitting on the hood of her car. Windshield was shattered, and she was bawling to the point where her body was heaving. So I was the senior officer, and obviously I was the vocal end of the approach. And so the first thing is officer safety, and I said, "You need to drop the bat." Well, he didn't. he actually turned towards me and kind of stopped leaning and stood up. And I said, you need to drop the bat or I'm going to take you out. Meaning I'd probably take out my stick and whatever would transpire. And finally, and then he became Mr. Affable R.J. Simpson. It was like somebody just flipped a switch. Dropped the bat. I told my partner, stay with him. I went over and talked to Nicole.
Okay, mental issues. When I married my last husband, his ex-wife had what was called Munchausen by proxy syndrome. Munchausen was a liar in Germany, the biggest liar that apparently ever lived in Germany. And they attached that name to this mental disorder, psychosis. It's a demon possession. And when I describe to you what it is, if you look at it from a demonic possession point of view, you're going to see it from a different angle. So what these people do, it's usually 98%. I'm an expert on this subject. I can guarantee you. I'm an expert. What they do is when they're a little child, and usually it's a girl, 99% of the time it's a girl who does this, it's not a guy. They get hurt or injured as a child. They are ignored by their parents. They have to go see a doctor. The doctor is paying attention to them, so they take and they transfer the love that they had for their parents over to the doctor. That's how it begins. Then they grow up and they are striving for this attention. They want attention, they want attention, they want attention. Now the demon had the open door back when the child fell and hurt itself. Remember, physical trauma is one way that a demon can get in, okay? So the demon comes along and says, oh, this doctor is going to love you more than your parents are. The child bites onto that and hangs on to that. They become an adult. In order to get this attention, they will become ill themselves to go to the doctor to get attention from the doctor. Well, it's a really bad situation because the doctor is never going to give that person the love that they are seeking. So it becomes an animosity towards the doctor. So now the patient is not only wanting to have attention, but they're going to get the doctor back for not loving them. Are you following me so far? Okay. So this person has Munchausen disorder, the liar's disorder. Then they get pregnant and they have a baby. They tend to marry people that are very mellow. They are very friendly, nice, kind, generous. They're easy to be manipulated and they're easy to walk on. That was the case with my husband. He was the kindest, sweetest, nicest person, would do anything for anybody at any time, and she married this man, okay? He having absolutely no idea that he was manipulated into that marriage. He didn't love her. He didn't want to be with her, but he was manipulated into that marriage. Okay, I'm not going to go into all that, but just take my word for it. They were married for 10 years. They had a child through artificial insemination because he couldn't make a baby. That's a whole other story. So that she wants to have a baby. She wants to have a baby, insistent on having this baby. He doesn't want a baby because they can't afford to go through the process, but she wins because she can manipulate him. They are the best manipulators you will ever meet in your life. So they get pregnant. She has a son. When that son is 6 weeks old, that son is in the hospital dying of pneumonia. And it only went downhill from there. For the first 3 years of this child's life, he was in the hospital 150 times. He was admitted 22 times, 22 months of his life, and he almost died 3 times. He was critical 3 times. Asthma, allergies, chronic ear infections, seizures that lasted hours at a time, respiratory problems where he would stop breathing. Well, once this all got figured out by me, what was going on, because back then, nobody knew about Munchausen's. It was a new thing that was happening around the world. Things happen and it's weird. It'll pick up and you'll see it all over the place. And so there was a man who had written a book called The Devil's Waltz, and he was on Good Morning America, and I'm listening to him talk about the premise for the book, and I about fell over because he was describing my husband's ex-wife and her dynamic with my stepson. So I got everything I could get on it. I started reading everything I could get on it, and back then there was hardly anything about Munchausen's. There was one book called Hurting for Love that was written by 2 doctors, and then there was the interview on 2020 with one of these doctors, okay? I read that book from cover to cover. It was the most dry read, but I read it 4 times because I needed to understand what I was dealing with, which was a chronic liar, a manipulator, one who looked like the perfect mother in front of everybody else, but was literally torturing her son when she was alone with him. Okay? She would stick needles in him. And by the way, she was an RN and worked in the emergency room. And that's one of the signs in Munchausen. They are very medically knowledgeable, and they often are nurses. She was a nurse, and she worked in the emergency room. So she had access to a lot of medications that could do a lot of things. So one night, my husband and I are talking about the situation, and I asked him, I said, can you tell me a time when you had your son alone and she came home and all of a sudden he was sick? Because we had realized now that Michael was a certain age that the only time he was ever sick was when she was around. If he had him and he was alone with him, he never got sick. He never had a problem. He never had an issue. But the minute she hit the door, there was always something wrong. So he sat there and thought about it for a while. And then all of a sudden he goes, I remember one time. He said, I was laying on the couch. Michael was about 3 or 4 months old. He was in the infant seat next to my husband on the floor. She was at work. She worked the 3 to 11 shift at the hospital. He said she came in the door, and he goes, my son was fine. He was breathing. Everything was fine. Having a sneezing fit. So he said she came in the door, and the minute she came in the door, she wasn't even anywhere near him, and she started screaming, can't you see he can't breathe? And my husband was like, what is going on here? He's fine, right? She comes over, she grabs him out of the infant seat and takes him into the bedroom. Why did she do that? Why aren't they out the door to the ER? He can't breathe. But instead of taking him and let's go, get in the car and go to the ER. Oh, no. She takes him into the bedroom and she's in there for a while. She comes out of the bedroom with Michael. They get into the car, and on the way to the hospital, he stopped breathing. Yep. He was in ICU on a respirator. Now, think about this from a demonic point of view. Oh, and by the way, these women know exactly what they're doing. They are not oblivious to what they are doing. They know exactly what they're doing to this child. This child is an inanimate object to them. Like a narcissist, if you're married to a narcissist, or you have parents that are narcissists, or you have anybody in your life who is a narcissist, you're just an object to be used. They don't feel anything towards you. You aren't human to them. You are literally an object to be used. And that is the case with Munchausen's. How many people want to hurt their child? Think about the demonic aspect of this. All right? This is not a psychosis. This is not a mental disorder. This is a demonic possession. So then the child is in the hospital, and the nurses are so enamored by the mom because the mom is just so caring and loving and just doting over the child. And, they just can't get over what a great mom this person is. I mean, they are putting on an act to end all acts. In the book, Hurting for Love, they are literally described as being the best actors that could ever walk the face of the earth. Okay? I tried to find the clip because it would have been very powerful. It was a documentary that was done back in the early 90s. This was back in the very early 90s when I went through this with this person. And in the documentary, it was done in England. They had a person that they were pretty sure that she was making her child sick. Why? Because when the mom leaves, if the mom is taken away from the child for any length of time, those symptoms all start to disappear and the child gets better. Enter mom back into the situation and the child is sick again. And they do it in a myriad of ways. For my ex-husband's ex-wife, my dead husband's ex-wife, she used medications on him to make him stop breathing. She would inject him with things that would make him have hives all over, to say that he had an allergic reaction to food. She did things to him to make him have seizures that lasted forever and ever. Okay? This was her MO. Well, a lot of people, they'll put fecal material into the IV bag through an injection, or they will poison their child, or they will take One person took 7-Up and poured it on the floor and threw food on it and said the child had vomited. You know, they make up illnesses in their children so they can get the children into the doctor, into the hospital, so they can gain access. Why? Because they want attention. They are wanting attention from who? The doctor. Why? Because they've transferred the love for the parent to the doctor, but that can never be satisfied. So it's a constant hamster wheel of making the child sick, taking the child to the doctor, expecting this doctor to love them for this magnificent person of who they are, and it never happens. Unlike normal Munchausen mothers who stay bedside, she didn't. She would leave. So her husband would be her child is in ICU. Her husband, Michael's father, is sitting next to him in ICU. Where is she? She's at a bar dancing. What is she doing at that bar? She is seducing every man in the bar and sleeping with anybody she can sleep with before the night's over. While her child is in the hospital dying of something that she did to him. This is how bad it was. When we had to go to a home study, she was told that she had to do certain things, and she didn't do them. She just flat out didn't do them. She did not do what they asked her to do. She was so arrogant that she thought she could get away with anything she wanted, and she was going to have custody of her child. Okay? So, in the clip of this woman in England, they knew that she had this issue, this demonic thing going on. This baby was probably 3 to 4 months old, and it is horrific to watch. They were overtly filming her. So everybody's out of the room. She's alone with this baby. The baby is laying on its back in the crib. This woman, this mother of this child, takes a pillow and puts it over the baby. And you see the baby's arms and legs flailing because the baby can't get any breath. I can't even describe to you what I was feeling watching this. They let it go on for, I think, no more than 30 or 40 seconds, but felt like forever. And this baby is just fighting for air. These little legs and arms, and this mother with the pillow, just as calm as can be with the pillow over this baby's face. You tell me that is not a demon in control of that woman. Finally, the nurse comes in. Off comes the pillow as quick as she could get it off. Oh, my baby stopped breathing! And she's making up all these excuses where she was the one that did it. That's one of them. Okay. I was at my daughter's house, and it was around Christmas time or something. I don't know what, but everybody in that house drank. And they had a neighbor over who was a just horrific alcoholic, and they were sitting outside. It must have been summer because everybody was sitting outside. I had walked out, and somehow, I don't know how the topic of Mary, the Virgin Mary, came up. But this man manifested, and he was growling. Sitting next to my son-in-law, this man who was just beyond drunk, was growling. And what came out of his mouth, I wanted to puke because of what he said about Mary. That somebody had to have blankety-blanked her to get her pregnant. And it was not nice words that he said. I turned around and went back in that house, got my stuff, and left. Okay, that's demon possession. If you have alcoholics in your life, they have demon possession. And those demons manifest when they are drinking. And you hear the rhetoric. You're no good. You'll never amount to anything. You're worthless. You're ugly. You're a piece of trash. Everything that's wrong with me is your fault. It's the same demon. It's the same spirit that is in every single alcoholic. And you know how I know that? Because I've been around them long enough in my lifetime to know that their rhetoric is exactly the same no matter what body they are in. They say the exact same things. Okay? I want to take you back quite a ways. I had a niece that was murdered when she was 4. I was pregnant with my second child. Well, when I had my third child, I felt this spirit around me when I was pregnant and afterwards. And when I had this child, I had a great fear that this child was going to die when she was 4. This was my third child. And my niece was always in my mind. I thought this was my niece's spirit because this was back when I didn't know that the dead can't do anything but lay there and be dead, okay? They can't do anything, nothing. They have no power, nothing. But demons know who your dead relatives are in the familiar spirit realm of the demonic. And so I felt this heaviness over me for 4 years. And my child had it on her because she talked about death all the time. It was nonstop. Well, when she was 4 years old, it happened when she was 4 years old. I was living in a house. I was divorced from my second husband, living in a house. I had a live-in babysitter because I was working crazy hours. And her dad and I were on the phone one day, and I could feel this spirit heavy in my house. And I had told him about my niece who had been murdered. Well, he was new agey, and I didn't know it either. And he said, well, you know, when a child is murdered, they don't know how to go home. They don't know how to get out of here. They're stuck here. I believed him because I was stupid, ignorant, dumb. So I'm sitting on the floor in the kitchen, and I said, this spirit is in this kitchen. I said, can you tell me where she is? And he goes, she's behind you. And she was. This spirit was behind me. I could feel her, or it, behind me. He says, you need to tell her that it's okay for her to leave. It's okay for her to go. So he goes, he said something, and it caused me to do an action to where I took my arm like this, and I came around and did this. So then I felt the spirit in my lap. I could feel the spirit in my lap. I can't see the spirit, but I can feel it. And I've always had a very strong sense of discernment in my life, which you'll see as I tell you these other things that have happened. So I asked him, I said, where is she? He goes, she's in your lap. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? He says, you need to tell her it's okay for her to leave. I said, okay. I believed him. I thought this was my literal niece. So I take my finger and I put it down here because, you know, she'd be 4 years old because she's a dead 4-year-old. And so I take her little hand that I can't feel on my finger, but I'm imagining that it's connected. And I take this spirit into the bedroom and I shut the door and I tell the spirit that it's okay for it to go. And it left. Know how I know? My daughter changed like that. She went from being depressed from birth to 4 years old and never smiling, always talking about death. It never left her until that day. And she completely changed. She smiled. I never heard her talk about death again ever in her life. And I never felt that spirit ever again. I can't explain it. I know it wasn't my niece. I don't know what that spirit was, but that spirit was oppressing my daughter. And how I was able to get it to leave, because I didn't say in the name of Jesus or anything, but it left and it never came back. Now, next one. My husband and son were killed in a really horrific car accident. And after they died, it started immediately. Light bulbs started burning out in my house, all over my house. I was replacing light bulbs on the daily in my house. My son, Michael, who was the victim of this person back in the day, he was multi-demonically filled, only I didn't know it. He had all kinds of stuff wrong with him. I mean, oppositional behavioral disorder, ADHD. If it has disorder attached to it, we're talking demon. ADHD, severe organic brain dysfunction, pervasive developmental delays. I mean, this kid, she had wrecked this child, had wrecked him. He was a hot mess. Well, he and his dad died in a car accident when he was 13. And this starts happening in my house. And I don't know what it is. I have no clue what's going on. I'm not reading my Bible. I'm not talking to God. I believe in God. I'm saved. I was saved when I was a little kid. But, God was always in the back of my mind, but he was never in the front of my mind. I never brought him forward and lived my life the way I do now, where he's always in front of me. He was always behind me. I took care of it myself. I don't trust you to take care of it for me. I will take care of it myself. That was my motto. That's how I rolled. Okay? I didn't trust God to take care of me. So light bulbs are burning out all over the place. Michael's toys are turning on by themselves. Toys that couldn't turn on by themselves. They were turning on by themselves. And I'd have to go upstairs and turn them off. He had a cardboard box. No electricity. Cardboard box, music box that you had to lift to make it play. If I turned on the light in the bedroom, the music box started playing. It's impossible, but it did. After 2 years of the light bulbs burning out, and of course the toys eventually were gotten rid of, I had the 11th light bulb go out in my garage. And I just had enough. So I'm getting ready to sell the house. And I'm thinking that Rick in the spirit is doing this to the light bulbs to let me know he's there. Okay? So I'm getting ready to sell the house. It's been 2 years. I've been still in this house, and I hated this house after they died. I wanted nothing to do with it. So I'm laying on the couch one day, and there was a pink lamp with a pink shade on it. And I'm looking at that lamp, and the light was on. And I said, okay, Rick, if you want me to sell this house, I want you to make the light bulbs burst, not just go out. Within, I don't know, 5 minutes of my saying that, the light bulb in that lamp literally burst, and glass went everywhere. Those were demonic entities that were in my home. They weren't attached to me, but they were in my home. But they did attach to my granddaughter, who was born while they were in my home. And how do I know that? Because she started saying things that only Michael would say when she was able to talk. And she didn't know Michael. Michael was dead before she was conceived. And you want to talk about blowing my mind? It literally wrecked me. I'm like, what is going on? Remember, this is before I knew the reality of what demons can do to us. And she got, the demon got onto her through an object that I let her touch, which was an angel that belonged to my mother-in-law. And we got it back when she passed away from cancer. And she's in my arms one day, and we are looking at, I'd started collecting angels. I will never have an angel in my house ever again in my life. They're false idols. Don't do it. Don't collect them. Don't do it. And a demonic spirit attached itself to that angel. And when she picked it up, it got on her. I won't say she was possessed by it, but it was on her. And 6 years later, she's in my house, and I asked her how she wanted her hot dog, and she said, coldy. And I about fell over, because that's what Michael used to say. And I hated it when he said it, because it was a word that his mother had taught him. And I was like, wait a minute. Only Michael says that word. That was a demon oppression on my granddaughter. And there are other things with my granddaughter that I won't go into to respect her privacy, but there's demons there, okay? Next door neighbor, since I've lived here, a couple moved in next door, and then their son moved in shortly after they moved in with them. And I felt a very heaviness over here, big time. And when I finally met him, I just knew there was a demon possession. I knew it. I knew that I knew that I knew it. Well, it showed itself. And I was informed that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was 45 when I met him, and he had a diagnosis of schizophrenia, but I didn't know that till after the demon showed itself. And then when the mother said that to me, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Schizophrenia, that's another one. That's total demon possession. Totally demon possession. I was in here doing one of these things, and I hear this maniacal laugh outside, and it stopped me. And I turned off everything, and I looked out the window, and it was him standing over here. And so I went, demons manifesting, because it was a maniacal laugh. It was like a hyena. So I started taping again. I started recording again. It happened again. And so I shut my door, shut my window so that the demon couldn't hear me. Well, then one evening I was over and I was praying for the husband who was passing away from cancer. And the son was sitting at the kitchen table and he was writing on something. I don't know what he was doing, but his hair is just all spiked out. And it's just, he's filthy dirty, unclean spirit. And I get done praying over this man and I'm getting ready to leave and I'm standing in the kitchen. And this son stands up. Well, no, before the wife was trying to find something to help with a breathing treatment. She couldn't find this thing. Of course, she's panicking because she thinks her husband's oxygen level is nothing. And she's panicking. So she says to her son, come over and pick up this chair. Now, demons are super strong. They are really, really, really strong. This recliner was heavy. It was well made and heavy. The husband stands up out of the recliner and this 45-year-old man picks this recliner up into the air and is holding it there. And I'm sitting there going, what? And then he slams it back down because the thing was underneath the chair. He goes and sits back down. I'm getting ready to leave. I'm in the kitchen area. I'm talking to the husband, reassuring him, that Jesus is there and da-da-da. And this this son stands up and he yells, or the devil's gonna take you down. And his mom said his name. Stop that. You get out of here. You stop talking like that. And I said his name. And he focused his attention right on me. And he said, that is not my name. My name is Diablo. And then he gave a last name. Diablo is the devil. Okay? Demonically possessed. And I could feel it. She had an encounter with God in the shower that told her that he was trying to wreck my life over here. He was trying to cast spells on me over here. Can't do it because I've got the protection of the Lord, but I anointed my whole house with oil after she told me that. Okay, so that's him. Another demonic encounter I had was a woman who lived down here at the very end of the row where I live. This came through the form of a sprinkler. I water my own yard. I always have. I've lived here. I'm going in my 9th year, and every year I have to tell the office, tell them that I water my own yard. Well, this one year, this woman kept coming into my yard and watering my yard. After I tell her, don't water my yard. And it was starting to make me very, very, very angry because I knew that it was demons. I knew it was. And so I'm rebuking them, rebuking them right and left. Well, one day she's at a party and she had been drinking and she sat down next to me. No one else at the party did she bother. I'm the only believer there, okay? Remember that. I'm the only believer. She sits down next to me and she starts hounding me with personal questions. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you this. I'm not going to tell you that. And she won't let up. And she won't let up. It's the demon manifesting because that demon hates me, you see, because I'm a believer. And that demon hated me because I was watering. She wanted to harass me. This demon wanted to harass me any way it could. And it did it through the hose. And it knew it was getting to me. Unfortunately, it did. All right? Demons are real. And you are surrounded by them. You are surrounded by them in your life. If you are living with people that don't believe in God, they have some kind of demonic oppression on them. And it is causing their thoughts to do what they do. So this is my story about the demonic. My battery is going to die, so I have to end my podcast. But I hope that you got something out of this today. I hope that you learned something about the demonic realm and that it is very real and it isn't going anywhere anytime soon. They know they're doomed, and that's why everything that you see around you. Oh, I do want to say something else. Next time you see a flamboyant gay guy, look at him, listen to him, and then you see the next one, look at him and listen to him. You will see they all act exactly the same. They all have the same lisp. Their hands all do the same glad hand gestures. They all dress alike. They all walk alike. They all talk alike. Why? Because it's the same demonic spirit. Being gay is a demon possession that got in, had legal access when that child was sexually abused as a baby or whatever happened to them when they were little. Every single person who thinks they're gay has a demon on board. Every single one. I'm glad I didn't forget that. Women who are butch, they all look alike. They all cut their hair exactly the same. They have the same hand gestures. They all wear flannel. They all wear their shorts. They're all overweight. Why? Because it's the same demon activating itself within these people. Start looking around. You'll start seeing people that act exactly the same. It's the demon, the alcoholic, who says the exact same things all the time. It's the same demon. So I'm going to end with that. I love you all. I hope you all have a very blessed week. I will see you on my next podcast. Next time, not on the podcast, but on my regular videos, I'm going to be talking about all the wonderful things that God does for us that we just don't even realize. So thank you for watching. I love you, and I will see you next time. Have a great week, everybody.